Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Everything is Fine, Nothing is Ruined podcast. I'm your host this week, Hassan, joined as always by my fellow host, Tristan.
That's me, your fellow host.
And folks, this week, Tristan says he wants to talk about one of his favorite new mangas, but he wants to try and surprise me about what that manga is.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
folks, we've done hundreds of these episodes. I know my good buddy, Tristan. He's not going to be able to surprise me. I just need to take a look over here at the list of some recent manga releases. It's going to be so obvious what manga he wants to talk about. So, just... No, Tristan, come on. I know you. I'm looking at the list. It's so obvious. First one, it jumps out. It's like, yes,
okay.
That's Tristan.
Let's
Obviously,
let's hear it.
What we're talking about is the manga. Damn, those are huge. The tall, big-breasted, brig-assed Gyaru-chan is in love with me. Anthology series.
Can you repeat that one for a second?
Yeah, it's damn, those are huge. The tall, big-breasted, big-assed Gyaru-chan is in love with me.
Yes, okay, that's not it. Maybe next week.
Yeah, look. You're a man.
Yeah.
You've got multiple tastes.
I do.
Obviously, there was a chance the first choice wouldn't be the one. So
not always. No.
Yeah, let's just of course. Folks, we're here to talk about the manga.
Mm-hmm.
Because of four moms, my rom-com's turning into a mom-com.
Is that an actual manga? That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's Takumi, a high school boy living with his overly affectionate, beautiful stepmom and in love with his childhood friend, is at that age where romance blooms.
Ooh.
One day, his stepmom mysteriously splits into four. Each mom, yandere, tsundere, childish, and more, has her own unique personality and supports or interferes with Takumi's love in her own way.
Oh no, that can't be good. Sounds like a rollicking good time. I'm glad that exists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No,
that's your topic, right?
That's not it, no. Although maybe next week.
Okay, let's just one last crack here. I'm egg on my face. I'm so embarrassed. I don't even understand how this wasn't the first. It's
happens to all of us. Yeah.
I don't know how I didn't realize our topic was going to be this. I feel like a fool. Folks, we're here to talk to you about Boruto.
No, we're not. I think. Look, I try to give Boruto a shot, and you just can't. It's not worthy. I don't know how it's still going on. I know it's the same dude that did Naruto. It's not Naruto.
It sort of is, sort of isn't. He's kind of just like a producer on it. It's actually someone else that does all the work. Yeah.
Fair enough then.
Tristan, I'm not gonna lie. I haven't read the other two I suggested. I've read a little bit of Boruto, but if you gave me the choice, I would much rather have to talk about. Damn, those are huge. The tall, big-breasted, big-ass Gyaru-chan is in love with me.
I would rather talk about
that than Boruto.
I might read that one and get back to you. It could be interesting. It could be interesting.
Sure.
Look, I'm reading it for the plot, okay?
Yeah, the plot.
Yeah, the plot's really good.
All right, well, if it's none of those, what are we here to talk about?
We are here to talk about today about a manga that is made by prolific manga creator Tsutomu Nihei, Tower Dungeon. His newest work, and I think it is doing some interesting stuff that a lot of fantasy comics are doing. And of course, like, it's doing a lot of stuff that fantasy manga isn't doing as well. Obviously, this is not an isekai, so it's already one up in the fantasy genre, as far as good, serious fantasy stories go. And there are... Go on.
How many gyarus or stepmoms does it have?
Well, to answer your question, how many do you want it to have?
Well, at least 3 gyaru, I would say. I mean, you don't have to best the other comic, but I'd like at least 2 stepmoms, you know.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. Okay. There aren't any gyarus, because that's not a thing in this... Well, I mean, like, because gyaro is a very specifically Japanese thing. This isn't set in Japan. So, you know, that's not happening. Stepmoms, it might have a few.
Okay, all right.
That's a thing that could still be a thing in the fantasy realm. You never know. As far as, like, big-breasted, big-assed ladies,
yeah,
a couple.
Oh, cool. All right,
yeah.
Perfect.
It does have, like, random spurts of comedic nudity that you have to kind of get past.
All right,
it's one of those. Yeah, it's you gotta, like, get past that shit. You're gonna read manga and enjoy anime these days, because it's in a lot of places. So I'm at a point in my life that I have moved on from those aspects, and I'm just like, you know what? If it shows up, whatever. May not be for me, but it's like, it's all good. Anyway, Tower Dungeon is essentially, like I said, the newest work by Tsutomu Nihei. You might know him as the guy who did Blame, or Blom, I think it's what it's pronounced. Or Opossums, or Biomega, or Knights of Sidonia. That guy. He's done a lot of variety, and specifically he's done a lot of work in this science fiction genre, and science fiction horror tends to be his go-to. And I think that he is very good at that. I'm a fan of Biomega. I didn't read Blom, not for lack of trying, just like it was one of those ones where I picked it up. I was like, this is really cool. I'll get back to it at some point. I just haven't done that yet. But I read Opossums a bit, and that's pretty awesome. And then I never read Knights of Sidonia, but I've heard good things. So, you know, prolific creator, does a lot of work. Mostly works in science fiction and horror, like a little combination of the two. Because Blom is very science fiction horror, and so is Biomega, and Opossums is as well. A lot of, like, skeletonized creatures, gross machinery. Things that are, it's very, like, Geiger-esque, you know? That tends to be this guy's artwork / storytelling style. A lot of things kind of slinking in the shadows. Very heavy, dark shadow, with the exception of Opossums, which is notably him flipping the script and going almost inverted, where he has very little shadow. And it's...
Well, that's because Shadow's a hedgehog, not a possum.
Moving on. Instead, though, Tower Dungeon kind of, like, comes back to the very dark, brooding, shadowy aspect. And Tower Dungeon, while I don't think it's going to be something on the level of, like, Berserk or anything like that, it is a noteworthy dark fantasy manga, and it's one of these things where, while it almost feels like we have too many dark fantasy stories out there, I don't think we actually have enough that are kind of, like, throwing around some weight like this one is. It's kind of because, like, Berserk is the one everybody goes to, and everybody goes, like, you know, it's a big dark fantasy manga / probably the biggest dark fantasy story of all time. It's got all the tropes you want. All the characters are talked about to death. It's great. We all know Berserk is great. But what is after that? That's the thing. Because we need to find the things that are influenced by Berserk, kind of like your Claymore or Tower Dungeon in this case. Or even like, I would say Attack on Titan has a bit of that Berserk feel to it. We need to kind of find those and really like, especially the ones like Tower Dungeon, which aren't really getting talked about a lot, dig those up and really relish in them, because something like this doesn't really happen a lot, where you get a good, sincere, dark fantasy story. They're usually a dime a dozen, but like fantasy in general, it typically just feels like a video game bullshit thing. I love the fantasy genre, and in a sense, I would say the fantasy like manga universe has a better grasp on Western fantasy than most Western fantasy comics do, with like a few notable exceptions. And I just feel like that there's a lot of it though, and you need to really dig. So
no, I agree with that, because I think I'm not the biggest fantasy guy generally.
Sure.
I'm a little bit more sci-fi, but one thing I do notice about a lot, or not a lot, but a good chunk of Japanese manga, when it is set in a Western historical time. I don't even want to, because it spans the ages, right? But basically anything up to say early 1700s or so, is that a good chunk of it has or does a much better job of actually portraying the just, I don't want to say necessarily like brutality, but what actual combat is like in just a suit of armor and a sword, where it's like, hey, this isn't the movie thing and people are doing all sorts of crazy, I'm taking on 3 guys at once and I'm besting my sword. It's like, no, you're doing that like 1v1, and it's like a dozen sword swings before one person's basically gotten stabbed and it's over, kind of thing. And I just feel like a lot of it, and perhaps it's just the difference in art style, because I do think that compared to a lot of Western drawing styles, they don't necessarily lend themselves as well to that sort of like, hey, really only like 6 actions are going to happen in this fight and then it's over, as well as kind of manga art style tends to.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm definitely with you that there's a certain irony to the fact that it's often like, Japan sure does a lot better job of like portraying, Dark Ages, medieval, etc. Europe than often Europe will actually do.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think it's just like they have a fast, like, manga creators have a deeper fascination for that stuff, because they haven't really had that jammed down their throats as much. Although at this point, maybe they have, and maybe they're kind of like me, and looking for stuff that is outside of the norm, just simply because there's a lot of fantasy manga and anime out there, and a lot of it is pretty bad, if not like just typical. But I mean, you get we're talking with in these last 2 years though, fantasy manga and anime have actually seen a good rise as far as interesting, unique stories go, just because there's a lot of people who are creating these stories that want to see more outside of the norm than I have video game logic in my fantasy anime. There's a guild. I level up. I get new skills when I... No. You get skills by just...
love Seven Deadly Sins and Black Clover.
Yeesh. Well, Black Clover is not great, but it's... I will take that over Seven Deadly Sins any day. It's not good.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I'll say that. But yeah, they're both kind of...
They're pretty bad. But no, like, yeah, there's some good fantasy stories out there. I mean, we discussed Freerun pretty recently, and Freerun is for sure up there as one of the best fantasy manga I've read in a long time. Same with something like Witch Hat Atelier. Stuff like that. There's just some good, solid storytelling, amazing art, and Tower Dungeon needs to be kind of like respected in the same way, I would say. I'm sure it will get there, but I do feel as if the audience of Tower Dungeon, specifically the audience of a Tsutomu Nihei manga, I feel as if his work, while often talked about, isn't revered in the same way. And I think it's because a lot of his work does heavy philosophizing and kind of goes nowhere. I know that Blum essentially is the horror sci-fi manga that's actually about nothing. Like, that's the premise where it gets to eventually. I know it's supposed to be like, oh, this guy is trying to find his way out of this sprawling mega city where everything is dead / non-existent, and it's just him and some machinery, and occasionally another character shows up. But really what's happening is he's having these conversations about life, death, philosophizing over whatever. And his work tends to be a little headier, while also kind of, it's a little bullheaded at times. And that's not a bad thing, though, because like it's almost like it's simple in its approach of talking to people. It's very Hemingway in a sense, whereas coming down to lower common denominator stuff, but trying to be a philosopher as well. And reading Tower Dungeon, it's hard for me to talk about this without kind of like getting into his past works, because I didn't read as much Blom as I want to, but reading Opossums, that one's more of a action thing, and Biomega is definitely more of an action horror thing. And it's just when he gets more in the horror as he goes, and it's the same with Tower Dungeon. And like I said, hard to not compare his works to each other because they all have similar themes. It's often a meditation on life and death and what we do with our lives and who we are as people and those sorts of situations. But as he has gone away from Blom, I feel as if Nihei has actually created something that's more accessible each time he does a new manga. And while that may be true, I think his work has such a pedigree to it that people are like, oh, it's the guy that did Blom? I don't know about that. This is like 100 chapters and not going to happen. They're not going to go anywhere. A lot of like walking around in like dark, creepy places. It's supposed to be like very soul wrenching, and I don't really want that right now. I want something more light and fluffy. So the more he does his work, I feel like he has gotten lighter and fluffier. And Tower Dungeon, I think, is an interesting intersection of some of that stuff.
Light and fluffiness is a different manga series altogether.
Yes, I would imagine it is. I also shouldn't say that Tower Dungeon is light and fluffy. It definitely is not. But it is, I feel, one of his most accessible works. Simply because what is happening, first off, the art is gorgeous, as is all of his works. It's not Blom. Look, Blom and Biomega, specifically, he spent so fucking long drawing every single panel of that manga to death, to a point where like each panel is a true work of art. And Tower Dungeon, I think, is him trying to speed up the process, simply because like it's got the same ideas behind the architecture and everything. He's known as the guy who draws crazy weird architecture and wants to give you this sense of a living, breathing like building, like living, breathing city, living, breathing structures. These are made of metal, wood, steel, stone, whatever, it doesn't matter, but these are alive in some way. And Tower Dungeon definitely hits that stride where it's a lot of columns, a lot of stairs, a lot of transient spaces. It's rare for the characters to ever find an actual room in this damn thing. It's kind of like if someone's playing The Sims and they make their house entirely out of hallways and stairs, and then occasionally you get a spot where there's like a table, and it's like, whoa, a table. That's what it feels like in this manga, because it's so, like I said, transient. It's everything is temporary. Like this thing is shifting, and the tower occasionally will change, except for the entrance to it. But there are multiple entrances, so you can always change where you go into the tower. And the idea is to go back in and out. It's also a little video gamey to make it accessible, because it, in a way, feels like a roguelike, I think, where when you go back in, you're kind of starting fresh again, but you may have already made some shortcuts to get to where you need to get to, where you last left off, and go from there. So I've been talking about this for a while, but what is this manga about? I'm kind of dancing around the plot. Essentially what this is about is a guy named Yuva is chosen by the Royal Guard. Not quite. A guy named Yuva is kind of like forced into joining the Royal Guard because
Tristan, we prefer the corporate term. He was voluntold.
A guy named
He's
Yuva
given
was...
the option to turn it down.
Oh, okay,
yeah. Do the work,
Yeah. A guy named Yuva, through financial reasons, was voluntold to go and join the Royal Guard because his family is poor as shit, and so is his village, and they need somebody to go and essentially send back money from his job. That's what this guy is doing, and Yuva is known as like the strongest of his village, but he's a big lunkhead, and he leaves with a big old backpack and his dad's kettle helm, which is basically a big like wide brim metal helmet. And he goes off to the tower because this is the big thing now, that the tower has descended from space essentially and created a chasm of its own right, and it's floating. It's free floating in the air. And the Royal Guard is trying to climb this tower, and essentially, it's very simple, save the princess at the very top. That's the story. This guy must go and save the princess.
Marry her.
Possibly, I don't know. Although
I've seen Disney films. They're going to get married, don't worry.
Okay, cool.
Well... Disney should option the rights to this and make it into a Disney movie.
Yes. Definitely Disney worthy, especially because the princess may or may not be dead. And is talking to them, like talking to people through dream logic and realms. But this is where it gets. This is where it gets extra weird, because while the premise is very simple, so he has done things to take the tropes and premises of fantasy and twist them into fucked up little versions of themselves. Like, for instance, dragons. Simply put, there are dragons in this world, and a lot of these dragons are actually referred to as drachmetamors, which they are creatures that have both a human and inhuman draconic form, but kind of like swap between the two often enough. But even their human forms are kind of fucked up looking, so it's very obvious who is a drachmetamor.
I got you. They're Trogdors.
Oh, you're not too far off, actually.
Yeah. I was expecting the actual answer to be Trogdor.
A lot of them are a lot more human than like, you know, than that. But there is one guy who is like one of the beginning villains, Karash, who looks not like Trogdor, but like has more of a dragon form in his like humanoid form, and has just like beefier arms, and yeah, like kind of like a Trogdor, right, but not like not an S. He's very gross. He's kind of like made of. He's almost like he's made of like rotting flesh. Yeah. So that's dragons. That's what this manga is doing with dragons. Dragons are that, and it's like, okay, well, what else is there? There's the main villain is essentially a necromancer. However, necromancers are just a thing someone could wind up being just by birth, and it's not like you have necromancer powers automatically, but you do have to like eat rotting flesh, well, fresh flesh, which will then eventually rot. You do have to eat flesh, and you do get the power to essentially live in unlife, which means if you die, you don't actually die. And
do I know?
Yeah.
That is it basically like, oh, you're born and there's a symbol on your chest, and you know that then if you do those things, that will make you a necromancer? Or is it just, everyone in the village has to eat some rotten flesh to see which of us gets to turn into a necromancer?
No. If you're born a necromancer, which can very well happen, is that, simply put, like, you are now the unlucky soul that is a necromancer. And again, you get
but how do I know that?
Oh, you will know because your body will decay instantly.
Oh, okay.
So necromancers spend a lot of time eating fresh flesh so they can maintain their more humanoid form, unless they don't want to.
Opposed to us humans who would never eat flesh all the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We of course will eat meat, which is already dead and cooked, but I'm talking like the flesh off a living body. Like somebody has to be alive, and they rip a chunk off them and eat it.
I'm just saying, look in the mirror, Tristan. Who's the real villain here?
Necromancers, typically.
Oh, all right.
And I'm fine with that. They're pretty cool. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and this one's interesting.
Crime.
A crime. Yeah. So the main thing is that the main villain is a necromancer who has kidnapped the princess and put her atop the dungeon of the tower. Tower dungeon, if you will. Now, there is a character in this story who is actually a necromancer, but good. And she is interesting. She's kind of newer. The way this manga is being released, it's very sporadic. So sometimes there's a long gap between when chapters drop. It's a seinen. You don't say, right? Yeah.
No, I think I see what happens here.
Yeah.
Is that the necromancer? It's going to be revealed is his childhood friend, and he's now in love with her. And thankfully, she's got big boobs. So
yeah. Well, someone's got to have big titties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So necromancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've read manga. I know exactly where this is heading.
Yeah. The necromancer I'm referring to was a current character in the party of these characters, who is a necromancer. She's
the outsider trying to get in between him and his childhood sweetheart. I gotcha.
She's kind of
harem.
Yeah, she's kind of stacked. But she's also, as a character, very weak in constitution. However, can just regrow her limbs, which is very handy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, wasn't aware she was a necromancer until the most recent chapter, where it was revealed, like, hey, she's a necromancer because of XYZ reasons.
What powers was she using before that didn't make it obvious she was
None.
a necromancer?
She was not using any because she's afraid of the fact that she is a necromancer. She doesn't want to be found out.
So she was just useless in the party, huh?
No, no. She actually is a good warrior. She has a sword and armor and that kind of stuff, and she's a frontliner. Yeah, that's the third thing. She is running up front.
She needs to play more D&D and understand like min-maxing skills and where to.
Well, in a way, no. she is.
She rolled her sheet. She got necromancer, but then was like, "No, I'm going to put my stats into strength." You're like, "What are you doing? That's stupid. You're wasting spells and abilities." Yeah.
So anyway, her name is Aradelia. In a way, she is min-maxing properly because she can't be killed. So as a frontliner, I think that's a good place for her. If she goes down, she literally gets back up. She can't die.
Really likes tub thumping, huh?
Yes. Fucking loves tub thumping. Big Chumbawamba fan.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. She will piss the night away, 100%. Okay. So we learned this in like a couple chapters before, a chapter before the current one. There's only 19 chapters of this, by the way. Very quick read. But very dense read. It's one of those mangas where like you're gonna want to like look at the environment because it's interesting. But like for instance, so she and Yuva fall off the tower into like a lower section. Now, I gotta explain something about Yuva. I don't know what Yuva is. I don't know if he's a necromancer as well. But he has survived shit where he just should not have survived shit. Like he is like fallen like
that's just himbo aura. Don't worry.
Kinda right. Like that's the thing. He is a big old himbo, and he at certain points falls deep into chasms inside the tower, and then just climbs right back up, like literally up the wall, just scales it like it's nothing, and it's like well that was fun, and like you fell like 3 floors down, and each floor is like 40 feet tall. That's not possible. And he's like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm good.
That's how just himbos work. Tristan, trust me. If you go find a himbo and you throw him off like the 12th floor, they'll survive. It's fine.
Sounds about right. But she also drops down with him this time. And it's not often that he falls with somebody else. And if he does, it's usually like, oh, that person's fucking dead. Too bad. This manga has no qualms over killing characters. But this one time where he falls with somebody, it's like, well, that's a shame. Happened again. And then she gets back up. And she's like, could you please pass me my leg? he's carrying her leg. And like, here you go. And then she regrows it. It's a whole thing. But yeah, Aradelia, basically she's got this whole like tragic backstory and like she's fun. And then like their current party is fascinating. They get like a princess from like the Mouse Kingdom who is like a 3-foot tall mouse, a Drachmanamor he's not powerful.
Anthropomorphized mouse or just
anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
She wears like plate mail and stuff.
I was kind of just hoping it would just be straight up a mouse.
That'd be pretty awesome. It's just like a Ratatouille situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot going on, like the way they're kind of like messing around with the tropes and everything in this manga. Magic is interesting because like magic is very much one of those things where like, hey, if you can cast magic, you're like 1 in 1,000 people who can do it. So you're gonna go and learn it. If you can do it, you're gonna go and learn how to control it because you're now legally required to. But once you do that, you can just go and do what you want. But we would like it if you join like the Royal Guard or something like that. That'd be nice. And this is where the weird horny part comes in. So magicians, you know how in Metal Gear Solid 5, Quiet's whole thing is that she needs to have her skin mostly showing so she can basically like photosynthesize.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that in this manga. Except for like the main girl who is their one magician, Lilibel. She isn't photosynthesize. She just needs like to feel the mana on her skin.
Oh, it's like shaman kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of thing. But she's still wearing like a big like Royal Guard cloak and thing. But she's like underneath nothing. So you get a lot of like of those jokes and those shots. And it's like, yeah, okay. That's fine. Here's the thing. I like that premise. I think that's really good. It's like, oh yeah, okay. In order to properly control the flow of mana and create magic out of nothing, you have to be able to kind of feel it on your skin in certain ways, and you get these like, little prickly sensations, and you can actually tell like, oh, I can do this here, and if I feel this on my foot, yeah, it's like, well, this makes sense this way, and I can actually draw a amount of this like through my leg into my hand, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that, or like, oh, if I feel it on my face, I can draw it down into my hands, or whatever it is. It's whatever you want to do with it in that case. And it's got an interesting system of magic, but unfortunately it's just used a lot of the time to make like nudie jokes. But again, it's fine. I'm beyond that. You gotta get beyond that shit with manga and anime. Because it just happens. It's just a style of humor that a lot of these writers like that maybe I don't at all. But it's fine.
It's not like Baldur's Gate 3 didn't have plenty of
it's got tons
nudity and all that.
Yes, I mean you can fuck a bear. Well, I mean to be fair, it's guy transformed into a bear, but it is.
His name is Halsin. Thank you.
It is implied that Halsin actually is a bear transformed into an elf, though.
Yeah, I know that
one. Anyway, yeah. So it's yeah, the way this manga is with the tropes and that kind of stuff. Like I said, there's necromancer, and of course necromancers create undead things, as they still do. But it does mean that like the way it's working in the story, which I think is a lot of fun, the more Royal Guard they send into an area, the more often the necromancer just like takes them out and just adds their army, of course. But like what they have been doing with some of this is like just making sure that the big aspects get really like granular. Like stuff like that, where like creating zombies out of a bunch of undead or previously dead soldiers, it seems like a nothing thing. It's like it just happens. We just who cares? They're dead. The necromancer raises them back up. They are zombies now. but because it's a dark fantasy manga, and like the characters knew these people, and I like the way that Nihei actually kind of like makes them go like, oh shit, we like that was my friend, and those I knew them, and now they're attacking us. But at the same time, we can't give a shit about that because we are trained soldiers, so we just see them as lumps of meat. And so you'll have a character who's just like Yuva, who isn't really, he's part of this, but hasn't been a trained soldier for a long time. He's like, oh god, that's that guy, and this guy. And then you'll have Eloquo, like the current leader of their group, who's like, yeah, whatever, and just like shoots guy with an arrow. I was like, I knew him. He owes me money. Fuck him. That kind of thing. So he's still playing with those tropes of like what life and death means, and kind of the more fantasy setting is really helping to drive home a lot of these story points. I like that they do often come out of the tower to explore this little pop-up town. It's interesting actually, because I think the tower dungeon itself exists outside of time, because what will happen is what happens is in this this manga, they go in the first time and they fight the necromancer and lose, and they retreat, and then Mirabelle, the captain in charge, is like, okay, I'm being summoned back to like the king, back to the royal capital. I have to go there. So it's just going to be you three tackling the dungeon for a little bit. Sorry, we have to kind of all go. Good luck. You have my support, and I'll be sending some troops soon. Once we get back to the capital. And it's implied that it's like a 15-day trip, something like that, back.
Yep.
So they go into the tower, and they climb around a little bit, and they get back to the floor where their whole battalion was defeated. They return to stone, and they have to fight these giant ants. It's a whole thing. And they eventually make their way back down to the tower, and when they come back out, a whole town has been razed. Where there was like a whole town. Like there was just like a small camp, but this whole place is like, it's all right. This now exists. There's a whole town here, and it's like, what the fuck? They were only there for like maybe like a week, maybe a month. But no, we're like talking like they built a whole town. It's not even like little like hovels or anything. We're talking full stone buildings with like multiple levels of structure and like aqueducts and gangways. And yeah, it's really playing with that like transient horror aspect in this case, which it's making it more fun, which is weird. Like I said, this isn't probably his more accessible work that I've read. I think he really tried with Biomega to make that more accessible in being like this really like rah guns military shit kind of manga. But I don't think that really worked because it was still steeped in that like dark horror stuff, which I love, but not everybody's going to gravitate towards that. Whereas Tower Dungeon, the horror aspects like feel more approachable, more like a Dark Souls thing, where it's not so like weighing you down. It's supposed to feel that way, but now we all know better. It's like whatever. It's just this is a fun romp at this point. It's not so dark and gritty. It's not a horror game. It just kind of looks that way. Whereas in Tower Dungeon is kind of approaching it the same way, where it kind of looks like a horror manga, but not really. So I think the main thing in approaching this manga, if you're going to read it, is to look at it more so as, horror adjacent, and really more so going for that, like I said, transcendent space of fantasy, and doing some interesting things with a few tropes. And I think it's worth everybody's, like anybody who would read a fantasy manga, I think it's worth a read, especially if you like more of a darker vibe, because he doesn't cut corners at all and showing like the gory details of things, and everything is like all the gore is very squirmy and gross as opposed to kind of like really like visceral. It's like if you see a body with its guts out, it's almost like he draws things like very worm-like. There's a great scene in the latest chapter where Ariadel, where she in her past had resurrected this creature, like conglomerized a like deer with like a giant slug thing, and that's the creature that accidentally gets created from her power. And it's just like, oh, okay, like that's how he draws viscera in this book, as opposed to like in other books where it's more like brutal, like you're reading like a 90s Image comic, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that's going to come down to, like, that's why everyone says that quote of, inside you there are two worms. So he's just sort of showing that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There are two worms. This one and that one.
Yeah.
They're just
like the quote everyone
going
says,
all over the place.
Two worms inside of you.
That's definitely it, exactly. But yeah, like I said, this is much more approachable. The art style, like I said, is very squirmy, very, very gross, but go on.
I assume since only 19 chapters that there's... I mean, you know, not that you would have any, like, actual knowledge, but I just mean in the sense of, like, the way that it's written, the pacing, et cetera,
yeah.
That there's kind of no chance that this would ever become sort of a manga, an anime to, you know, expose it to a wider audience.
I would say not right yet. Knowing that there's only like one piece of his work that has ever become an anime, which is Knights of Sidonia, and that wasn't that popular.
It definitely wasn't.
No, it was Netflix only one. Like, yeah. Knowing that it didn't get super popular, and like if Blam and Biomega didn't get their own adaptations, I think that Blam may have gotten like a movie of some sort or something. I could be totally wrong, but knowing that they didn't really get any adaptations. Say the Possums. Actually, no, sorry, I'm wrong. Possums did get an adaptation. I can't remember. I think it's from the same people that did Knights of Sidonia. But
well, in Sonic, it's called Clutch the Opossum.
I see. Thank you.
Yes. Blam did get a 2017 film.
Okay, that's way too late for it. Considering it like ended it in 2015 or something like that, but like it started like in 2000 something, like early 2000s. It's been going, yeah. It's one of
apparently plans for a full length film were announced in 2007, but
yeah, that checks out. Yep.
Derailed and all that.
It happens. Yeah, but knowing that like these like his work just doesn't get adapted in the same way as like the really popular works. Like his work is popular with people like myself who read horror, but like it's hard to do horror in anime, unfortunately. Like, okay, we had that Junji Ito horror adaptation for Uzumaki, and for some reason the ball got dropped real hard on that. Have you heard about this, Hassan?
It was like a 6-episode thing, right? And I think like was it like the first episode people liked, and then after that people didn't like anything else, something like that.
The first episode, and like the first episode is a piece of is a work of art. It's perfect. It's excellent. It's really well done. They nailed it. The last episode is okay, but the in between is garbage, hot trash. They fucked around with a lot of like the staffing, and like the directors changed a bunch, and like the how can I put this, the the linchpin just wasn't there on those episodes, where they didn't have anything to gravitate towards except for the original work. But in doing so, the directing got so fucking bad that like the animators were just like kind of like told to do whatever. They did, and then it looks the way it does because it looks silly now. Whereas like the first episode is like this like deep, brooding, mysterious horror episode about this manga. But yeah, it's a whole thing. But at the same time, horror in general, for some reason, when they try and translate it from manga to the anime side of things, it for some reason just doesn't hit. And I've tried watching other horror anime versus like the manga, and yeah, for some reason it lacks something. And I think it's because with an anime, a lot of these, even genre, like really like heavy genre-tized ones, they want to try and appeal to as wide of an audience as possible, as opposed to with a manga, it's a single creator, and they're usually published by ones who are like, yeah, hey, you know, this is being published by Viz on their like on the idea that like, oh, you know, this is a horror manga. And here you go. We publish this for you. But it's a single creator. Nobody else is involved. And if it tanks, we just kill it. No big deal. Or like Shonen Jump, which, I mean, that's got its own set of fucked up problems. But like the Shonen Jump mangas where like they have the ranking system where they will kill things if it gets too low in the ranks, etc. Like there are ways around that. But typically they know that if they're publishing it, it's a single creator with a single like mindset towards their own work, as opposed to in an anime where they have so many more people touching it, it can go a lot more incorrectly quickly, especially in a corporate sense, because in the anime stuff, in the anime side of things, basically it's a lot more about the money, as opposed to, you know, there's a sense with the manga. The art of it is kind of outweighing a lot of the monetary side, because it's like it sells. It's good to make money, but
that, you know, a manga, the costs are much lower, the profit margins are much higher. Whereas, like, exactly. In anime, it's like, okay, well, hey, your manga could get by with only 50,000 fans and still, you know, be profitable, because, you know, it's like it's never just one person, right? Because there's obviously like the manga author, usually a small team. Usually have you know, multiple assistants, editor, etc. So it's not nothing, but it's like, hey, that's still a lot smaller than an entire animation studio and, you know, voice acting, all these people to pay. So yeah, it's a lot easier to have a manga that serves a smaller audience than an anime.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's one of those things where, like I said, the smaller the team, like the more they can kind of like maximize the profits. Go like, okay, we only got to pay you so much and you so much and you so much and you so much. Like, yeah, it's not a big deal, as long as they get paid and that their work is you know it's like it's more about the artifice of it, the creation of it. As opposed to with an anime, it's like, here's a team of 100 plus doing these things. It's got these specific aspects to it. We have investors, blah, 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 blah. Which is not to say that they don't have investors into manga. They do. But I think the people getting into investments into like paper publishing and comic publishing and that kind of thing, they know that the profit margin is not going to be super high. It'll be a small profit, but like, you know, a small profit.
Yeah.
So I don't think Tower Dungeon is ever really going to hit the point where it will get an anime adaptation. Maybe it will. But as far as I know, not many people are talking about this manga. I don't really know why. It is quite good. It's interesting.
It's because not enough Gyarus and stepmoms.
That's it. It's got to get more Gyarus and stepmoms. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at My Dress Up Darling. That's got a Gyaro and step parents.
My Dress Up Darling's okay.
I like. You know what? I liked it a lot. It was, it's quite a good manga.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a fan. It's the ending was not the best, but it was deserved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I never care for the romance things where it's like, and they get together for 5 chapters, the end.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Too quick. What?
Like,
yeah.
This whole other part of character and relationship development. Nah, not interested in any of that.
Yeah, especially because, like, okay. This I don't know why we're getting onto this, but in My Dress Up Darling, the author did say he was going to do like one more big like cosplay thing, then never did. It's just like, yeah, ended it like, oh, it'll end in like 5 chapters, but there's gonna be another cosplay thing, don't worry. And it's like, no, that didn't happen, first off. And second off, he ended it in 3 chapters. Shit. Whatever, dude. Manga is weird. Manga gets weird. Especially romance stuff. And I'm not sure to tie that back into fantasy.
I guess just to wrap it up, like,
yeah,
I assume not expecting a sequel or whatever, but do you think he'll continue down this path of the next thing being more like Tower Dungeon, or goes back to sci-fi?
That's a great question, because like I think that even though Tsutomu Nihei's even though his style and the stories he tells are very similar to each other, and like Tower Dungeon is kind of like a quick twist on it, because like now it's fantasy instead of sci-fi. I don't know if this is going to work for him. So like I said, I'm not really sure how many people are actually reading Tower Dungeon. And I think people mostly go to his work to get science fiction out of their system, as opposed to fantasy. And I think he does fantasy extremely well, but I think the majority audience are waiting for him to do another horror sci-fi thing. Just because I think that's just where his wheelhouse is. So I can't tell, to be honest. I cannot tell if he will do another thing like Tower Dungeon, the fantasy realm, or if he'll go even lighter next time, or if he'll go darker. I'm not even sure if Tower Dungeon is actually going to lighten up or darken, as far as like the story goes and the feel of it. Because right now it's kind of like it's sitting in a nice in between where it can kind of like bounce either way, and I like that, because like you get these like really occasionally like dark moments, and then it kind of like shifts back to like being more light and fluffy. But not like, I shouldn't call it light and fluffy, a little lighter. Yeah, so it's one of these things where I am not sure where this guy is going as far as a creator goes. But yeah, I'm going to be along for the ride. It's fascinating, for sure.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a good place to end. So why don't you tell people where to find us?
Yeah. Well, you can go to our Blue Sky account, which at EAFNAR. I almost forgot what our account name was. That is embarrassing. Go there and yell at us about how much you enjoy Gyarus with big boobies. That's all I want.
Please don't.
That's all I want to talk about now. So,
oh, you're gonna get just the worst art.
That's in the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Hassan. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And
fair.
What you consider the worst art, I consider great art. Truly, like Michelangelo painting a Sistine Chapel, but with titties.
Sure. Uh-huh.
Anyway, go and yell at us about how much you like Gyarus. Also go to our Spotify, iTunes pages, wherever you find podcasts, your favorite podcatcher. Listen to our show, rate us a thing, hopefully a 5-star rating. Tell your friends about us. We're also on YouTube, where you're watching this now. I would assume if you were watching this, you're watching this on YouTube. Unless you've stolen it, you piece of shit. You should also go to FriendSavers. Go to FriendSavers, DJDane.com. That's the guy that does our music, DJDane.com. Listen to his great tunes. And I would say if you gotta like ascend a multi-floor dungeon that is also a tower, there is no one better to bring than DJ Dane.
Yeah, look, it's better than having me. I'm having a go, so I certainly would say voluntold him as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a toss-up between him or a big booby Garrow. So like,
yeah, I'm gonna say you should voluntold him.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's go with him. Yeah, it's a good idea. Anyway, that's it for our show. Tune in next week for another Embosk episode of Everything is Finding is Ruined. See ya.
See ya.
Say it.